Have you ever wondered how repetitive strain injuries actually develop? One of the most common themes we've noticed with our patients and other areas online is that people really aren't clear as to why they may have developed their issue. In reality, it's a simple concept. What you did over a certain period of time was too much for the muscles of your wrist and hand to handle, specifically the muscles you use for your repetitive activity. For a software engineer, that might be the extensors from lifting your fingers up from clicking or typing, or the flexors from actually pressing down. For gamers or controller users or artists, it could be from thumb-sided muscles from repeated small motions of the thumb with drawing or flicking the controller or analog stick. For pianists, it could be the pinky side of the wrist from straining or stretching with ulnar deviation as you reach out for certain keys. Every activity and motion requires the use of specific muscles and tendons, and they can only handle so much. For those who don't know, I'm a physical therapist that has specialized in treating wrist and hand RSI for the past decade. We've helped more than 3,000 individuals resolve their problems even after trying multiple years of seeing many specialists, many doctors, being ping-ponged around the healthcare system without any clear answer. We've published studies, textbooks, and even a continuing education course to teach more providers about how to treat these problems. And so today, to help you understand a bit more about how this happens, I'm going to teach you about the envelope of function. As you might know after watching or reading content of ours, we consistently reference the concept of a health bar. And the basic idea is that the tissues can only handle so much, or that we do too much and our tissues are unable to handle that stress. The envelope of function adds the dimension of time to hopefully provide a more amplified understanding of the concept. This concept was proposed by an orthopedic surgeon who was looking to highlight the concept of homeostasis. Homeostasis is the body's natural ability to maintain a stable, balanced internal environment to ensure survival and optimal function in response to changes both externally and internally. Here's the envelope of function. The black line shows what an individual can handle based on their conditioning, considering the load, the y-axis, and the frequency, the x-axis. You'll see that for high loads, I created a scenario in which an individual catches a 100-pound ball dropped from 3 stories. This would exceed most people's tissue capacity. Throwing a 5-pound ball one time is a high load, but doesn't exceed what you can handle. And actually, for most repetitive activities of the wrist and hand, you can see that they are on the very low load end, but the frequency is really high. So drawing for 2 hours, gaming for 3 hours, typing for 5 hours, or low-level typing for 10 hours. All of these are on the low end, but depending on how much you do it and how aggressive it is, it can fall in different places in the envelope of function. This can either positively or negatively affect our homeostasis. Do the right amount under the envelope of function, you're safe, and you can even handle more the next time you try it. Do too much above the envelope of function, and you can temporarily irritate the tissues, and you can handle less the next time you try it. Now let's put it in the context of a simple exercise most of us can understand. The bicep curl. The right amount is do 10 bicep curls at a weight, let's say 15 pounds, that causes you fatigue near the last 2 reps. Your muscles will get stronger and you'll build more endurance. Too little is do 5 reps of bicep curls of 15 pounds. No fatigue, our muscles aren't really challenged, so they don't improve in strength or size. And too much is attempting 8 reps of bicep curls of 100 pounds. Your muscle could be damaged, especially if someone helps put it into your arms and you try it. So we can visualize how these various situations can impact our tissues by layering on the zones in the envelope of function. And this parallels the regular concept of the health bar we consistently reference, yet we add some more nuance. The gray zone, which is tissue damage, with high enough load, and it has to be excessive, like catching a 50-pound bowling ball dropped from a single story, that would definitely cause some tissue damage. And this is definitely something that never happens while we're typing or gaming or drawing. The red zone is tissue irritation, so any combination of load and frequency that reaches the red zone will lead to irritation of tissues. And when we spend enough time in this zone, it can eventually lead to tissue damage. And the nuance here is that when loads are high, there's a higher risk of traumatic injury that can cause full tears, damage that leads to more prolonged disability. But the positive thing about most RSI injuries is that because there's such low load and more of a problem of high frequency or too much, there's less risk of injuries leading to long-term disability. And I made a full video on this last week. You can check that out right in the description or over here. The blue zone is the safe loading zone. This zone represents the area where things are safe, and loading at various frequencies will either lead to positive adaptation or keep the tissue where it's at. the homeostatic zone. And within the blue zone, you can find the right amount of loading that can help individuals progress in their ability to handle function. I like to call this zone the optimal loading zone. And you can see the green line is the minimal amount of stress that you can apply to improve your capacity to handle stress. And depending on how close you get to that red line of the max tolerated dose, you'll progress a bit more quickly at the risk of sometimes irritating your tissues. And this is why working with a physical therapist often allows you to find the right amount or optimal load more quickly, as they can help you methodically assess your current physical capacity. That's through endurance-based tests for RSI-related problems. 2, they can help you assess your current load and frequency, your activities, through a comprehensive assessment of what you're doing and what you're performing, and being able to clarify the differences of intensity during that performance. And I've alluded to this before in my other pieces of content, but within any specific activity, there are certain things that cause more stress compared to others. For example, playing a solo with a guitar on the fret hand is likely more stressful than playing chords. And 3, your psychosocial factors. So they need to assess your fears, your beliefs, your understanding of pain and problem that can influence your perceived load. Now, the yellow zone, which is too little, this zone represents doing way too little for your tissues, often causing them to weaken and result in the curve types that you see below. This zone is typically where most traditional interventions fall and why they often fail in helping the individual return to function. It should be clear why the things that you tried before weren't enough to support improving your tissue's ability to handle stress. And this is why the advice of just resting or resting and taking medication does not help, as it only reduces your tissue's capacity. Early activity has been shown to help tissues recover more quickly, but it's always a matter of how much, which is often the difficult part of figuring it out yourself. While working with a provider that's up to date on load management and pain science can help get you there more quickly. And so there's typically 2 paths that are taken in response to an RSI. Unfortunately, most people take the left path, which leads to tissues getting more weak and the zone of irritation coming down. The right path is first recognizing what led to the problem in the first place and making the right modifications, moving more earlier on, building up your capacity, and that allows you to get back to doing more. Now remember again, the x-axis is frequency, or how much, and the y-axis is load, the level of stress. Since the level of loading isn't typically high with repetitive strain activities, there isn't much we can do on the load side, except to make some minor changes in our posture, our ergonomics, our input devices. But we can reduce activity. We don't have to completely stop. We can reduce it to the right amount so that we can focus on building up our envelope of function. Or as we have said many times before, our health bar or capacity to handle more repetitive stress over time. So how can you use the envelope of function? Well, by understanding more about how your injuries occur, you can use this concept to actually improve the capacity of your specific wrist and hand musculature. And I hope you can see now that there's always going to be a relationship between your current symptoms and the specific changes you can make to help you recover. And the magic is all in the dose. How well we apply these changes in load, your exercises, and frequency, how many reps, sets, your activity management will directly influence how quickly you recover. So whenever you feel specific symptoms, you can always think about whether or not it was a 1, load-based stress. Was it exercise or intensity-based that led to some form of tissue irritation? Or was it 2, a frequency stress? Was it the activity duration, how many reps you performed that led to the irritation? And when you identify what that is, then you can use that as data to guide your decision-making going forward. And it might seem simple, but the added complexity is layering on your tissue adaptation timeline along with understanding more about pain. Because often when we deal with pain for long periods of time, or if we have fears or things we don't understand about pain, it can lead to symptoms despite the tissue itself not getting irritated. And I'll be creating more content about this in the near future. But let's review. Repetitive strain injuries develop when tissue demand exceeds capacity. What you do and how much you do influence the demand. And addressing the capacity and frequency through activity guidance helps you gradually restore your functional capacity. Now, I hope this helps. And again, as a small PS, this framework focuses purely on the physiologic aspects of pain, but doesn't take into account what can often happen when we deal with pain for extended periods of time. Sensitization, both peripherally and centrally. And that can lead you to feeling pain when you use your mouse or your keyboard within 1 to 2 minutes, despite your being able to cook, clean, perform self-care activities without pain, and being able to do exercises without pain. The tissue itself is not getting irritated, but your nervous and immune system are being overprotective. You can learn a lot more about this in some of the articles I've written down below, but if you need extra guidance and you want to figure out if we're the right team to work with you, you can book a free assessment down below and we'll determine if we can best support your specific situation going forward. Hopefully we'll see you on the call, and if not, check out some of these other videos over here.